We have new developments in the Capitol riot investigation. This new disturbing body cam footage from the Justice Department shows a rioter tackling an officer. Prosecutors say the man in the red and black jacket you see there is Thomas Webster, a former New York City police officer and former Marine. I want to warn you that what you're about to see, him shouting and attacking police with a flagpole, is very hard to watch. Meanwhile, NBC News has obtained a transcript of the FBI's questioning of Webster from February. When asked if he was tied to far-right groups like the Proud Boys or had ties to members of Congress or Capitol Police, Webster answered no. Webster remains in jail. Joining us, trial attorney Katie Phang, who's also an MSNBC legal contributor. Katie, let's start with the FBI asking Webster directly if he had ties to anyone in Congress. What does this signal about how seriously the FBI is taking any allegations that there could have been help?
Well, we know, Alicia, from the FBI director himself, Christopher Wray, testified this past week that they've arrested 500 people, but that there are hundreds more being investigated. So it begs the question, are some of those being investigated members of Congress, members of the staff of Congress? So what they're trying to do is tie this whole thing together. You know, the low-hanging fruit is always, let's make those evident and very obvious arrests. But let's see what information we can gain from those people that we are arresting and that we are prosecuting to be able to build cases against others. We know that investigators in law enforcement have uncovered messages indicating a level of organization and planning leading up to the day of January 6th. But do the people that were actually the inside job, right? The people that were in Congress, were they actually implicated? Well, we don't know. And so when we're hearing things like, did you know somebody or are you connected with somebody? When you hear those questions, it obviously lends to the question whether or not investigators actually have ties to somebody in the United States Capitol that, again, would have indicated an inside job.
That leads to questions. There are other things that lead to questions, such as some Republicans peddling a new conspiracy that the FBI somehow responsible for the insurrection. Here's Texas Congressman Lou Gohmert.
There are some major questions that need to be answered because we don't like to see government agents stirring up trouble or find that there are criminal acts that would not likely have occurred had not the federal government been participating.
So I get that Gohmert sound there is an attempt to muddy the waters and the intended audience is not the FBI. And yet I wonder what the FBI will make of this kind of smoke and mirrors coming from members of Congress.
The FBI and the Biden DOJ will continue to do what it does. It keeps its head straight forward, its eye on the ball. The FBI, they are not going to be distracted by absurd statements like Gohmert, which is a clear abdication of his duty and his oath of office, which is him, completely promoting conspiracy theories that are not based in fact. Alicia, we're looking at video evidence of insurrection. This is not the tourists that were armed that were deciding to take, a visit to the gift shop on January 6th. This was an armed insurrection. We know that there was a recent superseding indictment charging a man by the name of Guy Reffitt. He's now one of 3 confirmed armed insurrectionists. He came from Texas with an AR-15 and a .40 caliber firearm. So that is what happened. It wasn't the FBI that was basically, fomenting rebellion. It wasn't the FBI that was involved in this. And to suggest otherwise, again, is an abdication from his oath of office from Louis Gohmert. But fundamentally, you got to keep your head forward. You got to keep your eye on the ball. And that is exactly what the FBI and law enforcement is going to be doing now.
Well, to that point, documents from the Justice Department show that they're referring to the conduct of a defendant who's a Proud Boy member as a federal crime of terrorism. NBC legal analyst Glenn Kirshner tweets that indicates a case is building. What do you take from the language being used there by the DOJ?
Well, let's be clear, Alicia. There is no crime or statute recognized as, quote, domestic terrorism. But what I take heart to is the fact that just this past week, the Biden administration announced its national strategy to counter domestic terrorism. So that's why you also see the FBI transcripts revealing that they're looking for ties to the 3%ers, the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, the far right groups that are adequately and should be labeled domestic terrorists. And so we know that if they're looking into those ties, then they are recognizing, they being the Biden DOJ and Biden law enforcement, that they are looking into whether or not there is the presence of domestic terrorism in terms of how it was planning that went into the January 6th insurrection.